Hi, everybody. Greetings from Mother Earth News. I'm Rebecca Martin.
I'm Russell Mullen.
I think you probably recognize us from other Facebook Live videos. What we're going to do today is make butter, show you how to make butter in your home. We are going to show you all the steps that you need to go through to make butter, and then at the end, Russell will actually mold some butter, a pound of butter in this butter mold. This really nice, is this cherry wood?
Yep, cherry wood.
Cherry wood. Please be aware that there are links that will be posted so that you can find more information about making butter, and also a link to this butter mold on our website if you're interested. So, Russell, where should we start? You want to describe your churn here?
Yeah, so today we're going to be describing how to make butter the old-fashioned way. And so today we have an antique hand crank butter mold or butter churn. And so this is a daisy.
It's got an actual daisy right on the, you can't see it, but it's right on the works.
But just know that if you don't have one of these at home, there are a multitude of other ways that you can make butter. At home you can use a stand mixer. You can use just a simple old mason jar, fill it up about halfway, and find an enthusiastic kid to sit there and shake it. Yeah, kids are great for making butter. You can also just use a blender or food processor.
And I use my KitchenAid mixer.
Yeah, so there are so many different ways to do it just besides what we're showing right here. But
those ways are either really long or really loud, so we're just going to go the old-fashioned way. And you can still buy these new. They're also antiques on eBay and on the web, and maybe in your own kitchen or in your grandparents' house. So
absolutely.
So we're going to use the old one. Go ahead, Russell. We're not going to have enough time to actually make butter in this mold or in this churn, but we're going to show you what we did earlier today. We actually did make butter in another one very similar to this.
Yes.
So what we have here is some really good cream from a local dairy. This is pasteurized, but it's not ultra pasteurized. Ultra pasteurized kills the good stuff, the good bacteria that lives in raw milk. That's a health and safety matter for commercial vendors of dairy. You can also use raw milk, and actually we've both made raw milk butter before and cheese. It works great. It still has all of the good bacteria in it. And if you were going to do that you want to get started, and I can tell them. So what Russell's making is sweet cream butter, which is just regular cream right out of the jar, right out of the refrigerator, into the churn. But you can also make cultured butter. And the batch we made earlier today is cultured, and it just has a really nice flavor to it. I grew up with cultured butter. My grandmother made it, so to me it tastes like butter. If you've ever had cultured butter, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a little tangier, the butter fat is really prominent in it. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else I can say about it. I mean, it may not be as yellow as what you're used to, because some commercial butters, the reason to make your own butter is that commercial butters do often have additives in them, coloring, stabilizers, a lot of salt, and also a lot of commercial butter makers add more water to their butter than, what we're doing is basically removing the water from the cream.
Right, we're going to separate the butter fat from the buttermilk, and so this agitation process is going to knock those fat molecules kind of out of place, and they start sticking together. And so the more you agitate it, the more those fat globules stick together, and eventually you'll end up with a semi-cohesive blob, which is what will eventually become your butter. So a process like this would take about 10, 20, or 30 minutes, depending on how much you are going to sit here and do it, how fast, and also how warm your cream is. So the warmer your cream is, if you bring it up to room temperature, you don't want it to be really warm, but if you bring it up to room temperature, it'll go quite a bit faster than if you start out with cold cream. So that's something to keep in mind.
Also, we were doing the batch we made earlier today. We had kind of a Mark Twain thing going on, so we were making noise and we were attracting people and saying, "Hey, would you like to participate in this?" And it really really saves your arm, but it can take quite a while to do that.
And you'll see a couple of phase changes as you go through this. So you notice we filled this up about halfway. As you start agitating it, it's going to introduce air, and eventually you'll end up with a thickened cream, and then it'll become a whipped cream. And then after that, you'll start seeing something that's a little chunkier. Things will start sticking together, kind of look like a chunky whipped cream or even a cottage cheese consistency.
And that's what's known as breaking, where the milk fat solids separate from the buttermilk. And I always thought when I was a kid that buttermilk meant that it was really loaded with butter. Actually, buttermilk is what's left over after all the milk fat, or most of the milk fat, has been removed. It's, kind of skimmish milk. I mean, it's very, very light milk.
Yes.
So getting back to cultured butter, so again, we're making sweet cream here, which is just cream straight out of the bottle. It's pasteurized, but not ultra pasteurized.
Right.
But the batch of cultured butter that we made earlier today, I took the cream out of the bottle and I added a little bit of yogurt with active cultures in it, about 1 tablespoon of yogurt, all natural yogurt, per cup of cream. Let it sit back, stirred it up really well, let it sit in the bottle overnight in a warmish place, about 70 degrees. And you can just taste throughout that period until it has the flavor you want. You can let it go a longer time than I did or shorter. So you can use yogurt for that. You can use cultured buttermilk with active cultures. It's got to have active cultures in it, not ultra pasteurized. There are some things you can buy, including mesophilic as this culture that you can add, and again let it sit out. Here's some kefir. If you have kefir grains at home, you're making kefir, you can use kefir grains and do the same thing. It's adding the good stuff back in. Or if you have your own dairy or access to raw milk, just let the raw milk sit out. Again, you don't have to add anything to it. You let the raw milk sit out on the counter or in a warmish place in your house for at least 8 hours, 8 to I think even 48. Some people go, depending on the flavor. The flavor will get stronger over time. That's perfectly safe with raw milk because it's not been pasteurized. It's still got all the good bacteria in it. When you use pasteurized from the store, you've got to add back the live cultures to it because it's had those removed. So that's to make cultured. Again, you can just do sweet cream without adding anything to it. You just take it right from the fridge. All right.
So are we ready to show? Okay, so
let's pretend we've been doing this for like an hour or 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah. Here we go. And so here we actually have a batch of cultured butter that we have already gone through the process of churning. And so you can see the kind of change that you would notice, how it begins to separate.
It breaks, You
can kind of see where you have that solid in there. The butter fat has separated from the buttermilk. You'll notice, even if you're not really paying attention to looking in here, you'll notice that it gets a lot harder to turn. It'll almost stop you from turning. So that's a good indication that your butter, it is broken.
Yeah, it's like really obvious. You just have to go way beyond whipped cream. And when I use my KitchenAid mixer, I hear it making a clunking sound as that butter is thrown around the bowl. It's really obvious, just the sound alone. So look at all that good fat there. Good, and that's a beautiful shade of color. A butter color. I wouldn't add anything to that. So what we're doing next then, this has been churned. We're going to strain the buttermilk from the butter solids.
Yes. And so some of you...
It smells so good.
It does smell really good.
We have a question.
Okay.
We have a couple of questions actually. People are wanting to know again where you can get the churn. And then if you should let the raw milk sit out to get to room temperature.
Oh yes, the raw milk, I'll answer the second one first. Let the raw milk sit out at about 70 to 75 degrees. I have a pilot light in my oven. I turn the pilot light on. This is how I make yogurt. And I just I mixed up the yogurt, like a tablespoon per cup of cream in here, shook it, and put it in there, back in the jars, in my oven, and let it sit there for 24 hours, or 12 hours, I'm sorry. And again, just stick your finger in there and taste it until it tastes the way you want it to. And the other question, do you remember the other question? I don't. I'm sorry. I have the churns.
so
from Russell's parents.
So if you're fortunate enough to actually have an antique churn, a lot of them are still in perfectly usable condition. Clean them up. You can use those. They also do sell these hand
Layman's,
crank.
maybe?
Yeah, there are all different kinds of places that you can still find these hand crank churns. So just look around. You'll be able to find them, even newer ones. And again, if you don't have access to a hand crank churn, you can still use something as simple as a mason jar, or you can use your stand mixer with a whisk attachment.
Yeah.
You can use your blender, or you can use your food processor. I mean,
It all
any way
works
to
the
agitate
same way.
it.
Or
Yeah.
you can work your kids, you know,
Yes.
have them shake the jar that it's in.
Yeah.
It'll take a while. Okay, so Russell, when you open this, the smell of that cultured butter is so good.
Yes, it is really good.
It smells like real butter.
And so what we're going to be doing right here is we're going to be pouring this through a fine sieve, and basically we just want to separate that butter fat from the buttermilk. And so what we should get here, you'll be able to get about a pound of butter from a quart of cream. It depends on the fat content of your cream.
And we have 2 quarts.
Yes, so we should be able to get about 2 pounds of butter out of this. And you'll end up with about 2 cups of buttermilk for every quart of cream that you start with. And so we should have about a quart of buttermilk and
so
2 pounds of butter.
Buttermilk is really good to use for baking, and some people prefer it for drinking too, just drinking straight like milk. So don't throw that away. So this was half a gallon, and we ended up with 5 cups of buttermilk, and probably, if you think about 2 pounds of butter, maybe?
I think we'll have about 2 pounds of butter.
Okay, so the next step we have to do in butter making is to get the last of the buttermilk out of those milk fat solids. It's still mixed in there. If we leave it in there, it's going to go rancid faster than if we wash the butter. Believe it or not, that's what it's known as. And we're going to do that. We're washing the butter with water. The water is not going to be incorporated into the milk fats. They're separate, but you will be able to see little puffs of cloudy buttermilk coming out when you're smashing this in water, and we hope to get a close-up of that. So you just want to rinse it at least 3 times, in changing the water every time. And Russell's going to do that now. Some nice buttermilk here. Okay, do you want me to take that away from you? And smell the butter.
And so now we have our butter in here. It still has some of the buttermilk mixed in, which you can kind of see. And you'll definitely see it when we get the clean, cold water. You want to use...
It's already still draining at the bottom. See how that's working?
Yes.
It's still coming out. We got to get that out of there so that it won't go rancid on us.
And you want to use water that's as cold as possible. And this way, you don't want to use warm water. Obviously, it would melt your butter and you'd have a big mess on your hands. So we're just going to pour this in here.
The water is almost immediately starting to get cloudy already.
And you can use your hands if you are comfortable with that, or you can use a spoon to kind of massage that butter.
Can you all see it getting cloudy? I'm sure you can. You can see it on the camera. That was clear water, and that's already cloudy. So Russell's just working that butter. If you go to antique stores and you see those old butter paddles, those wide paddles, that's what they're made for, to work the butter and to wash it. You can also do this with your hands. Your hands will get pretty cold.
I prefer my hands, actually.
I do too,
I think
but
hands are the best mixers in the kitchen, just about.
I do too. I like them better, but this is the more hygienic way.
We'll be sharing this butter, so
Yes, we will.
So we'll do this for everyone else's sake.
Let me get some. I can pull some of the ice out of there. Oh, that butter. Oh, that feels like butter already. It's really
Yes.
nice and cold. Okay. So, do you think, Russell? When do you want to
I'll go ahead and change it out. I'll get it all packed together here again.
So you could eat this just like that. I mean, if you're going to eat like a pound of butter or at a family event or something, go ahead and eat it. You don't have to rinse it as much. But if you're planning on having this butter around for a good week or more so that it'll feed your family, you should rinse it because it will go rancid within a day or two, possibly. So you want to get that buttermilk out of there. Actually, I could probably...
And it usually takes about 3 or 4 rinsings before your butter is really, really clean. You want to just keep going until the water no longer gets cloudy.
Sometimes when you push down, you can actually see little bits of buttermilk squirt out. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, and you want to make sure to mix it, get in there really well, because you can have little pockets of buttermilk, and you want to be able to get it all rinsed as well as you can.
You can freeze butter if you have, like we're going to have a lot of butter left over from this video. We can't eat it all before it goes rancid, so we'll just mold it.
I don't know about you, Rebecca, but
Well, I think if we fed the office, we probably could eat it all right now. We're having a baked potato, so we could easily use it all up, but we're not. Let's pretend that we have to freeze about half of it. It's very easy to do that. We'll just mold it up, wrap it in some waxed paper, and seal it, put it away in the freezer, and it'll last in the freezer for probably a good 6 months to a year. So I know a lot of people do that, especially in the spring when they're getting a lot of cream off of their milk. They will make a lot of butter and freeze it, make a lot of cheese too. There are differences if you're buying milk from farmers. There are differences in milk flavor and butter fat content throughout the year and dependent on the breed of cattle. So like a Jersey cow is known for its really high butter fat content in its milk. Other cows, not so much. So you may get more or less butter from the same amount of cream that we did today. It just depends. Commercially, cream generally has about 80% in it, but it's not unusual for a home dairy operation to get like 86%. So you might get a lot of butter out of the same amount of cream. I could have strained that out probably and prevented that from going in there. I think you're getting close, Russell. It's looking pretty clean. And it feels like butter when I stick my hands in there. Because it doesn't have as much water content in it, it's not diluted as much, homemade butter tends to freeze harder than commercial butter. Or it tends to be harder in the refrigerator too.
Yeah, I believe they're allowed to have 80%.
80%.
So a lot of times it will be diluted in the store in order to make it softer and also increase profits. So making your own butter, you are going to get a better product.
Do we have any other questions at this point?
No, they're just curious about how you're going to store it afterwards.
Okay.
But you kind of went over it.
We'll be able to show that.
Yeah, so that's looking really good, Russell.
This is looking very
think
clean.
Maybe, what do you think? Are we about ready to mold?
I think we're ready.
All right.
I'll get some of this ice out of here.
Yeah, we don't want a big hunk of water in our beautiful butter. So, I know some people talk about eating butter plain. I can't imagine that with commercial butter, but this cultured butter, homemade, is really good. It's got a little bit of a tang to it. It's got a lot of the butter fat forward in the flavor. And I don't know if butter can have a finish like wine has, but I get butter fat for minutes after eating homemade butter, homemade cultured butter. It's just really great. Okay. Now we'll show you how to use this handy mold next. Do you need something do you want me to spread out a towel? Oh, you got wax paper. Never mind. I suppose I could stand here and churn while you're doing all the hard work, couldn't I?
Yeah. We're just going to drain off as much of the water as we can.
Now, at this stage, we could add a little bit of salt.
Yeah, you can even add herbs or honey. Really, the sky's the limit.
Don't overdo it on the salt. A little goes a long way in homemade butter. That's all I'm going to put in. I think just a couple of pinches in basically almost 2 pounds. That's probably about 1.5 pounds. I've also followed some bloggers who talk about using, to wash their butter, they use rose water so that it's got a lightly rose flavored flavor. It imparts that to the butter. Or they'll infuse water with rosemary and that'll give a savory flavor to the butter. What I've done here is like made some scones. I would say a lavender infused water, rose infused water, making baked goods with that is really special. That really takes it up a notch. But today we just used regular water and just a couple, like a pinch and a half of salt.
I am going to use my hands right here.
That's okay.
I want to be able to squeeze as much of that water out of that butter as I can.
And as he squeezes, more water is coming out. Yeah, you're wringing the butter.
Yes.
People are really excited about the color and
Isn't it beautiful?
all the information.
So again, this was cultured. I cultured this yesterday overnight with a little bit of active yogurt with live culture. Just let the cream with the yogurt mixed in sit out in a warm place, 70 to 75 degrees overnight. I just invested in some really good cream, commercial cream from a local dairy that was not ultra pasteurized, just pasteurized. Added a little bit of culture back in with that yogurt live culture to give it more flavor, let it sit out so that those active cultures would add flavor. And in the spring, if these were like from Jersey cattle that had been on grass, that butter could be really bright yellow.
Yes.
And have a totally different flavor.
All right, I think we're getting pretty close here. I just want to be sure to get all the air pockets and water pockets out of there.
So Russell again is squeezing the water out of this. We've been washing this butter in water to get the buttermilk out of it so that it doesn't go rancid in storage or before we can eat it. That looks pretty good, Russell.
All right, I think it's getting pretty good.
Okay, so what we're going to do is mold it into a log. Or a brick. I guess it's more of a brick.
Yeah, it'd be more of a brick. And so we're going to use this Sweet Mary's wooden butter mold. This is cherry wood. We actually have these in our Mother Earth news store if you want to check that out. They're $54.99, and these are really good quality. I mean, I've really enjoyed using this. Puts out a perfect pound of butter. And
it comes with the mesophilic culture,
Yes.
so you can use that to culture, to make cultured butter. And instructions, and I think a recipe or two maybe? Maybe the recipes for making butter, probably. And you've used this before, right? Many times now?
And it works great. The thing I like about it is that it's so simple and straightforward. A lot of butter presses and molds that you see out there, there's places that you can mess up. You have to soak them in water or something like that. This you
Or
can
freeze them.
Yeah, this you can put right in, put the butter right in, and put out a perfect pound of butter. I know it's a perfect pound because I weighed it. I mean, it is a perfect pound, and a pound of butter is 4 sticks. So, and you'll see when we get done here that it'll be.
So that would be great for people who are wanting to sell butter. You got a perfect pound.
Yes.
And it just looks a lot nicer than, I mean, you can see what it looked like when Russell rang it. It's a little gnarly looking. You could roll it into a log and roll it in herbs.
Yes.
There's a lot of different things you can do, just use your imagination. But it's really that easy to make butter. So he's just finishing up packing the butter mold, the Sweet Mary's butter mold. I don't know, did we get about, maybe not quite 2 pounds then?
Not quite 2 pounds. Nope, this will be about a perfect pound.
Yeah, great.
So I'm just going to pack this in here too. You want to make sure to try and get rid of any air pockets if that's important to you. It's not really too important to me. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I do like it to look nice. So I'm going to try and get the air pockets out of here.
Someone mentioned using a cheesecloth when you take the water out of it.
You can do that. You can use cheesecloth.
Yeah, and wring it in that.
So do you leave it out of the refrigerator, or do you put it in once you're done with it? Like, what do you do?
After you're done with it, well, you should put it in the refrigerator. My grandmother never put hers in the refrigerator. The butter was always sitting out. But, that's not, I think, probably not encouraged by the FDA. It's up to you. It's going to go rancid a little faster if you leave it out.
Yes. And so here I just have a piece of wax paper. And I prefer to press it out onto wax paper because when I'm done with it, I'm actually going to just wrap it up and it's ready to go in the refrigerator or freezer. And so I give it a little bit of a press just to squeeze any of those extra air pockets out. And then I just put my thumbs here on what's called the follower. It's basically a plunger. And your fingers go right here and you're just going to lift up on it. It can be...
Did you push it? Did you pack it so hard that you can't get it off?
I might have. Maybe you want to hold that.
Okay. You want me to hold it while you push?
Yes.
Hold this. Am I holding the wrong part?
Nope.
Oh.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, good.
Just had to break the seal.
Great. Oh, look at that. Man, it's beautiful.
Okay. I got most of the air bubbles out. And then you'll just take your knife
Yep.
and you'll just cut right along the edge here to separate it.
That's a perfect pound of butter. Homemade just this morning. And again, we sell these butter molds on our website. They're Sweet Mary's butter mold. And they come with a culture and instructions for making your own butter. And we'll also add links to this video, the comment stream in this video on where you can find the butter mold and also how to make cultured butter from our website.
Yep.
So if there are no more questions,
We're good.
thank you everyone for
Yeah.
joining us today, and we've got to go eat some butter.
Yes, definitely. See you next time.
Bye.